You can also combine primers during the later phases of the shave. For example, I can do what is called a manual extraction of slag off of the cube, off the primer. And you can see out here in front I've got all kinds of different priming cubes. They all work, the technique is the same for all of them. I can manually just lather up, just pull the slag right off the primer by itself. Now, what's the difference between this and pulling it off the cloth? Well, first of all, doing it this way produces an outstanding, very, very, very much thicker media. It's just kind of just pull it right off your fingers and palm of your hand. And if you can see that or not, it's like a little mound of shaving cream. It's intensely concentrated. And you can take, if you want, you can take this and you can just simply spread it and cut it. The main reason you would use this is for what we call spot cutting. Take, for example, you've built your wet mix, you've put it up on your face, and you've reduced the first form. You've cleared the first form. Now, you've cleared the mix, and you're moving to your second form. What would you do? Well, one is you could just pull the slag cutting mix right off the primer, spread it and cut it. That would be very fast. So what if you wanted to slow it down? Very simple. Add some cutting balm. And this is called a hand mix, right here. Just add some cutting balm. And I don't know if you can see this very clearly or not, but it's about 3 to 5 times thicker. This is magnificent. You just take it, you massage in, put a piece of steel to it on that second form line. Okay? In method shaving, the art of what we call spot cutting is fundamental to getting these spectacular gloss shaves that are now becoming increasingly more important to this entire process. So what I've done here is I have compounded this media in the palm of my hand, and I've created this outstanding spot cutting media using cutting balm and slag and a little bit of water. Now, if I wanted to adjust that a little bit, you could do this. You could add some activator. And if you added activator, what you would do is you would increase its velocity and you would reduce its density. Now, how often would you do that? Well, I don't know. As often as you like. As you learn to use these products, you will find all kinds of marvelous ways to combine them in different forms and in relations that will produce outstanding stability for any mix you want to cut. Historically, when we tried to spot cut years ago, which means that you would go in with a razor, and let's say you were cutting, let's say you were clearing your second form, and you had your center third, fourth quadrant seam right here. You've got a follicular ridge, we call a ridge right here, or it's also known as a trap. And you're coming through, and that blade hangs up on that trap, on that buttress, okay? Well, classic technique tells you to back up and clear it on the first form line because you didn't catch it on the first round. Well, what if you don't want to do that? What if you want to just get in here and just clear it? You don't want to go back and cut the first form. Well, don't do it then. Just pick up your primer, hand lather it, get a little bit of slag, tiny bit of cutting balm, massage it in, and see what happens. Give yourself about a 30-degree pitch, come through, and you'll lock that blade right on that follicular ridge, and you'll clear it. Gone. Now, what did I just do there? Well, I took the primer of my soap, of my hard soap, and I mixed it with cutting balm. And you're saying, well, but isn't that mixing two primers? Isn't that going to be too fast? No. In that relationship, the cutting balm becomes a buffer. In that relationship, the cutting balm becomes a buffer when used in the context of a spot cut reduction. And that's something you just simply learn by doing. Cutting balm can be both a primer and a buffer. When it's used to build wet mix, it's a primer. When it's used as a cutting agent, it's a buffer. When used in conjunction with paste, it's a primer. Hopefully that makes sense. Cover that again later on, but the main thing to keep in mind is whenever cutting balm is used in the building of mix, it is a primer. It is a primer that's acting to stabilize the mix. So you could, I guess, theoretically argue that it's a buffer in that relationship, but we're not cutting it. So it's not a buffer. Only when we cut cutting balm with a blade in any form does it automatically become a buffer. So does it have to always be used in conjunction with paste? Not necessarily. We'll cover that in a later video. However, I strongly suggest that you do not cut just slag and cutting balm by itself for too long. You could do it for a couple of days, but you don't want to do it consistently. You definitely want to use that cutting balm as an intermediate buffer between the slag and the paste, because you want that water to pass from the sink through the slag, through the cutting balm, and into the paste, so that you don't lose your hydration. You take out the cutting balm, you're going to lose that colloidal transfer of water from the wet mix into the paste is going to be severely inhibited.